the podcast to fill my brain. Movies and task, Reddit, minute of sports, betting $1 and Joel the game, Quora and questions from real listeners, all that and more on Joel the podcast. Bzzz. Hello everybody, I'm Alex.
And I'm Alex.
And this is our podcast,
Joel.
Welcome to episode 102, I think.
I gotta go check.
I'm pretty sure it's...
It might be 102. I want to say at some point we were gonna end on 103 and then we, didn't keep it up correctly or something. Alright, let's see. Well, this is a mess. Gotta fix this. This might be 100 and... No, yeah, this is definitely 102.
Yes.
That's what you said, right?
That is what I said.
Good job.
So welcome to episode 102, the final episode of Joel the Podcast before we go on hiatus, which I guess as we record this no one knows because I haven't recorded the new theme song so we can post episodes 100 and 101.
Right. But I guess, there's a silver lining to that, which is we're going to be able to post the episodes into the hiatus, and the hiatus will be shorter.
Nice.
So, good job, us.
Yeah. You can deduct from my Joel score for this.
I'm curious.
Well.
I'm curious. I don't want to. Well, maybe I shouldn't say this in case something bad happens. But I'm curious what it's going to do to our ratings to not podcast for 9 months.
I mean, our ratings are already pretty low, so I don't really know. And our one listener, I think is loyal enough that he will be interested in listening when we come back. So I don't think it'll be a big deal. All
right. Well,
or maybe it'll skyrocket us for some reason.
That might be kind of depressing.
Excuse me.
Quality episode. Let's do the stuff we always do.
Let's move on to the part where I say that Nathan does not owe me $1.
And Alex does not owe me $1, and that's going to be true for a while. Well, actually, one of us owes the other probably quite a few dollars.
You owe me a bunch of money, actually.
We don't actually know how much yet, so we should make that spreadsheet and figure it out. But anyway, that's not podcast related, so.
So let's talk about sports.
All right.
So since it's been a hot second since we podcasted, there's been a lot of sports stuff.
Don't worry, we'll still condense all of it efficiently into 1 minute. So
we will do a terrible job, and here we go. I'm going to start talking really fast as soon as I press the button.
I will just stay silent. This is all you.
All right, here we go. So the Olympics started, or continued. I don't remember if they started by the last time, but the U.S. is winning in medals. China is winning gold medals, though. In gymnastics, Simone Biles, who's considered the best in the world, had to step down for a while, but came back for the last event or two. So that's good to see. The U.S. has done below expectations in swimming, but above expectations in other things like fencing. In the NBA, free agency started, and nothing interesting happened to report. In baseball, the games have continued. The trade deadline happened, so there were a lot of big-name trades, and the Cubs and Nationals traded away all their best players. So they're basically minor league teams right now. In football, training camp has started, and no major changes, and the Green Bay still has Aaron Rodgers, which was a question coming into the season. And last but not least is... What else did I forget? I guess that's it. Boom.
All right, I was a little worried when you started looking at the timer with 25 seconds left, as if you were like, "Am I done yet?" But that worked out all right. So good job. We finished strong.
Okay, let's move on. I assume we did not receive any emails this week.
We may have received emails since the last time we talked about emails, because if you remember, I was trying to access the email when we were together and I didn't have like the two-factor authentication to log in.
Right.
So let's see. July 19th. That was during the trip. So this email we have not talked about yet, which is great. So here we go. Hi, Alex. Oh, sorry. This is from Cephalopodmaster. I feel like that's just kind
Obviously.
of a given at this point.
Yeah.
And the subject line is I am a dumbass. So, the standard stuff. The email says, Hi, Alex and Alex at Joel the Podcast. I'm really liking these greetings, by the way. He's doing a good job. I forget if we mentioned that in a previous episode to encourage the greetings. If we did, good job us. But if we didn't, good job to everybody, I guess. I don't know if you're recording episode 100 this week or next week. Plot twist, it was a few weeks ago now. It's okay. I don't know if you're recording episode 100 this week or next week, but I prepared something for you to celebrate episode 100. Attached to this email are 3 sound effects. You can now have applause and a laugh track on the podcast. So, I mean, good news. We haven't actually released the episode, so I can go back and just kind of sprinkle these in.
Please do.
So I don't know if you caught that. Actually, this is a little bit strange, and I haven't listened to this yet. But he says attached to this email are 3 sound effects. We can now have applause and a laugh track. So what's that missing? So
what's the third one?
It's
we're gonna find out on the podcast right now.
We're gonna find out. It's titled Nut.
What?
It's titled Nut. I don't know what it means.
Like the food?
Yeah, N-U-T. Nut.
Okay. I'm kind of worried about playing it on the podcast now.
Let me get my audio set up here to play this really loud. Shelby's on the phone in the other room with her mom, so... Cephalopod Master, I'm really trusting you on this one. Here we go.
He's earned the right.
Alright, let me know if you can hear this.
I heard that it was talking, but I couldn't hear what it said.
Oh, it was me. It was the quote from episode 5 or something where you were eating some peanut butter cracker and you got it onto my phone, and I said, yep. For the listeners, Alex just nutted on my phone.
I was eating a Nutter Butter.
A Nutter Butter, perfect. So I don't know how we're going to insert that.
Just right at the end. I'm Alex and Alex. Thanks for watching. Joel. I just nutted on my phone.
That's gonna be our new closer to every episode. Let's tack that on the end. So
all right. Well, I do appreciate it, Cephalopod. Thank you, and I hope Nathan is willing to put in the effort to throw those. Excuse me. Throw those sound effects inside our episodes at appropriate moments.
Oh, absolutely! Episode 100. I feel like we owe it after all these weeks. For you know what we could do is probably make kind of a soundboard type thing where you just...
I would love to have... I mean, I know this is the last episode for the hiatus, but I think it would be awesome to have a soundboard, and I know we're not really enough of audio people to, be able to do that properly, but, to just be able to, the radio station, the sports radio station in this area, they have a lot of inside joke soundboard pieces that they play.
Yeah,
it's kind of funny. I wish we could do something like that.
Yeah, well, we've got some time. Maybe we can make it happen. Although, given our track record of coming up with things to do for the podcast and then failing to execute, I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll
I almost
see.
Certainly will fail to execute this. So, but good idea at least.
Yeah. Wait. Let's just go ahead and congratulate ourselves for having that idea.
Patting myself on the back right now.
Yep. So, way to go, us. But yeah, that's the email. I don't think we got any others, but let me just check real quick. Yeah, that is it.
All right. Let's get into the episode. For those of you who don't remember, we did an advice episode few episodes ago, and we didn't get through all of the advice that we received, so we're going to go through the last 4 advice questions. And yeah, so going back to our roots, first episode, last episode advice podcast. I think it's very poetic. Again, it's not the last episode ever. It's just the last episode for now.
For a while.
But first episode, last episode for now. Advice podcast. All right. So let's begin with this first piece of advice question, which is from Dan Brown himself, the author, Dan Brown.
Dan Brown, New York Times best-selling author of the Da Vinci Code and probably some other books, I would assume.
Yes, that's correct.
So Dan writes to us. He's a very good writer, by the way, of course.
Of course.
Don't want to...
But just remind everyone, this is a summarized email. We've kind of condensed it. This is not like his writing word for word.
That's true. I guess this is my writing, which is certainly on par. So
yeah,
just assume...
Nathan Dan Brown, who can really tell.
Right. Anyway, Dan writes to us, one of my friends and I have an inside joke that we came up with when we were very young. We've since added another friend to the group who doesn't understand the joke, and that friend has started getting upset with us for not telling them what the joke is about.
Uh-huh.
I don't actually remember what the joke is about, so I'm worried that the first friend will find out and stop being friends with me. I'm also worried that since I can't tell the second friend what the joke is about, they'll stop being friends with me. So the question is, how do I, Dan Brown, New York Times best-selling author of the Da Vinci Code and probably others, make new friends?
This is make new friends. That's pretty funny. This is like the setup for a sitcom episode. I actually like that. And also it reminds me of shit. What was the joke? Oh, Good Enough. Anyway, so
nice.
Because that was actually kind of a similar situation. All right. So how do I find new friends? Well, actually, I would say maybe like if this were a sitcom episode, I don't think you would like it would end up with you keeping the friends.
That's true.
So maybe try that first, I guess, is my first thought.
Is there a way, can you think of some way that Dan might be able to convince the first friend to, like, tell the second friend and also secretly be telling himself? So that he's,
Well, the way I see it, there are 3 options.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 1 is you just admit to both of them that you don't remember the joke.
Right.
And hope that they are actual reasonable people and not insane and, like, stop being friends with you because you didn't remember a single inside joke.
Seems a bit risky.
That the entire body of your friendship over many years can actually hold up without that inside joke. It is risky, so that's why it's only an option.
Right.
Option number 2 is you can admit only to the friend that doesn't know the inside joke that you don't remember it.
Right.
And that way they will ask the other person. It's actually a multifaceted plan. Number 1, they will ask the other person what the joke means, so you can find out what the joke means.
Right.
Number 2, they'll feel more like camaraderie with you because they'll be like, "Oh, I'm not alone in this. This person also doesn't even know what they're saying." Right.
Right. Right.
So you're kind of making some camaraderie with that person. So that's kind of another good option. And then the third option would be to come up with an elaborate plot, such as you might see in a sitcom, to like trick the friend who knows into saying the answer,
right?
While you and that other friend are around. So that's like, I would say that's like probably the number 1 option. There's definitely going to be some fake disguise, like some disguises involved in that plan.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Fake mustaches and such. So plan accordingly. But that's kind of my thought. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when you were describing the second option, that almost sounded to me like the kind of sitcom plot option. But
Uh-huh.
I do think it's worthwhile to go even further over the top and just, with number three, I feel like that's the most reliable.
Right.
I mean, because think about it. Like you said, if this was a sitcom and the sitcom option was chosen, right? Like everything would just work out in the end and they would all remain friends. So
Right.
in a way, that's the most likely to work, even if it is also a little bit ridiculous. So
Yep.
I would just in life keep that in mind. If an option seems so crazy that it would only work in a sitcom, well, maybe that's the smartest way to go.
Okay.
So
I think we're on the same page with this one. Um, let's maybe since we don't have a ton of questions for this episode, let's maybe spend a minute trying to come up with some elements aside from a disguise that would be involved in such an elaborate plan.
sure.
Um, obviously, the disguise is one, but what else can you think of that might be involved?
Yeah. So the way I see this going down is you arrange for the two friends to meet without you, and
Right.
you are disguised as you actually meet up with them disguised as a kidnapper, and you essentially tell them that you have taken yourself hostage,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to you're going to kill you unless the friend can confirm some kind of secret phrase or possibly explain a joke or something like that, kind of like a nudge nudge, here's the thing you're supposed to say.
Right.
Obviously this would nearly work. Like you could even have the second friend as kind of an accomplice and be like, oh, that inside joke, this is exactly the situation, and you could tee it up perfectly. But assuming this is in the first half of the sitcom episode, what would then happen is that the first friend reveals some embarrassing secret about you to the coffee shop or whatever, like the bar or whatever kind of typical sitcom meeting place you happen to be in is.
Sure.
So obviously, kind of following through with that full description, this doesn't seem super likely to work. But maybe if you wait until the second half of the episode to try this, it can kind of go down in a more conclusion worthy way. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Well, the thing about a sitcom episode is that basically, the first plan is guaranteed to backfire.
Exactly.
So what's going to happen is, right, you're going to do this, and then I like the idea of the revealing the embarrassing story, and then so you have to escalate your plan, and whatever you escalate it to will also then fail, and in
Right.
the end you'll have to admit that you didn't know the phrase, and your friend will be like, oh, that's okay, that's like a normal human being thing to say. And then they'll tell you, and the new friend will be in on it, and everyone will live happily ever after. That's what would happen in a sitcom episode.
Right.
But this isn't actually a sitcom episode. It's actually, real life. So with that being said, that means your first two plans are guaranteed to fail. So I would say that it actually, we've just established the first plan. It doesn't even matter what your second plan is. It's not going to work. So just
True.
skip straight to the third plan, right? And I think your
Just
and I
don't
think your
even do
third
it.
plan. I think your third. This is where the disguise comes in. I think your third plan involves you setting your friends to meet up, and really kind of through communications with the friend who doesn't know,
Right.
setting them up to be really curious about the joke.
Right.
And then, so you are nearby at the meeting place, disguised as like a janitor or something, so you can overhear the conversation.
Of course.
And you just inevitably, since you've piqued the friend's curiosity, he's gonna ask the other guy what the joke is, and you'll hear it, and then you can go change out of your disguise and show up and be like, "Oh, hey friends, guess what?" And then you say the inside joke, and then everything is good because now everyone knows it. So I think that should be your third plan. Okay. I think we have thoroughly covered the advice for this question.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next question. Who does this question come from?
This question comes to us from Martin Joseph.
Martin Joseph asks, I can't explain how I know this, but in 6 months the Yankees will trade for a player named Joseph Martin. Now, this may not mean anything to you, but trust me, it will be hilarious. So my question is, how can I best capitalize on this info? I guess I could get some Reddit karma, but I don't really care about that at all.
First of all, I guess we probably need to roast Martin Joseph for not caring about Reddit karma.
What a fucking loser.
The single most important thing in my life. For sure. So
how else will you be able to prove to yourself that you're popular and liked by people?
Yeah, I mean, when
funny.
When you're getting into real life arguments, you're not even going to be able to say, "But you know, look how much Reddit karma I have." Like, what's
clearly Reddit disagrees with you.
What are you going to do? Like, here are all my life accomplishments? That's stupid. So bad job, Martin Joseph, for that. This is some really interesting news. I'm kind of curious, like outside the context of the question. In 6 months, the Yankees will trade for a player named Joseph Martin. I'm
wondering in what scenario would this even be funny? Like, clearly this person thinks this is going to be funny.
Right. I mean, if we could figure that out, maybe we could post it on Reddit for the karma.
We'll get the karma. Well, we already know. We don't even need to figure it out. We can just, get the karma anyway. But, how can this guy... I mean, first of all, this guy is kind of an idiot for telling us and asking us how we can capitalize on it, because now we know it and we can just capitalize on it. But
Boom,
let's discuss on this
again.
podcast... Boom, roasted. Let's just discuss on the podcast how we can capitalize on it.
Right.
And how this... Martin Joseph could have capitalized on it if he weren't an idiot.
Right. Because unfortunately for him, both us and our listeners will be capitalizing on it instead. So
yes.
Let's see. Aside from Reddit karma, of course, I feel like one thing that would be kind of fun to do is buy a bunch of billboards around New York.
Right.
And post this on there. It's difficult, I guess, because I don't understand how it's going to be hilarious. Maybe there's some kind of situational, like, maybe it's hilarious because he's famous for, like, eating 300 hot dogs at the stadium and passing out on the pitcher's mound in the middle of the game. Like, maybe that's why it's hilarious. So, like, in that case, obviously, you could start your own brand of Joseph Martin hot dogs, so that you've got the situational irony when that actually happens.
Right. I think that my first thought is not to, like, make a joke out of it, but is so you set up an elaborate magic trick that completes in 6 months.
Oh.
And so you're, like, revealing, like, it's like kind of like the card in the tree trick. If you've ever heard of that. Somebody
no.
put a card in a tree.
Okay.
I'm trying to explain. The tree grew around the card. So the card was, like, in the trunk
inside the tree.
And it was encased in, like, a clear medium, so it wasn't just, like, a single card inside the tree.
Right.
And so, I don't know the exact trick, but basically they cut down the tree and took out the card and were like, is this your card or whatever?
Wow.
And it was like amazing. So they'd like set up this trick well in advance. But
yeah, that's pretty impressive.
So we're setting up a trick like that where it's like we can show that we wrote down this prediction like 6 months ago, aka today.
Right.
And then be like, look at this news page and oh look, we predicted this 6 months ago somehow.
Right.
Obviously we have 6 months to come up with a good way to actually present the trick.
So the trade happens, and then we burn down Yankee Stadium, and from the ashes, it spells out the Yankees drafted Joseph Martin on whatever date.
You mean traded for?
Oh yeah, traded for him. I mean,
right.
that would be hilarious, right?
That would be really funny and actually amazing. Anyway, but the details of the trick don't matter because what we're going to do is we're going to use this the next 6 months in addition to coming up with this trick. We're going to start learning how to do actual magic, right? And so the fact that this trick is so amazing, it'll propel us into like fame,
right?
And then we'll become famous magicians because we'll have learned how to do actual magic in that time as well.
That's a good idea. I mean, how much longer than 6 months could it possibly take to become a professional magician?
I can't imagine it takes more than a single month.
Right.
I mean, I don't have a job right now, so a single month of my time is easy.
Yeah.
All right. So what else? What other things can we do besides the elaborate magic trick to capitalize on this info?
Yeah,
Any other thoughts?
You could. I'm trying to think of. I guess like other ways that you could get this info out there in an interesting way is maybe start calling into radio stations.
Right.
That's definitely, or you know what, even better than that, emailing podcasts.
Yes.
Yeah, so what you could do is send an email to every podcast that you know of, and you know some of them, you know most of the good podcasts anyway, will read those emails on the podcast and react to them. Right,
and so there would be like a recorded, you know, evidence that you predicted this.
Right. I guess they're not necessarily trying to like gain anything in particular. They're just trying to capitalize on the info. So,
well, I mean, capitalize kind of implies gain something.
I kind of phrased that poorly, I think. Like, we're not looking for like fame or anything in particular. It's just like some form of capitalization.
Right.
So I guess the other thing you could do is make a bunch of bets about it.
Yes. I mean, that's kind of the obvious one.
Right. Well, I mean, Reddit Karma was the obvious one, but...
Well, Reddit Karma was the obvious one. This is the obvious one that wasn't in the email.
Right. The second obvious one that everyone should have thought of immediately.
Right. So you can make bets with people. I bet you the Yankees will... $1,000 the Yankees will trade for Joseph Martin in 6 months.
Yeah. Is it? I have to say this. I know it's not, you know, maybe necessarily, you know, polite. So I'm sorry if we offend our question asker here. But do you feel like Martin Joseph is kind of a weird name for someone to ask about Joseph Martin?
You know, I was thinking about that, and then I was like, wait a minute, aren't we making up fake names for these people that are sending in the questions?
Oh.
So I thought you probably just made that name up, so it's fine.
That is okay. That's correct. I suppose that's all right. That answers that question.
Sorry. But on a related note, I'm watching the Phillies game right now in the background of this podcast.
Yeah.
And for the Phillies, Bryce Harper is batting. And the Nationals have a pitcher warming up in their bullpen named Ryan Harper.
I thought you were going to say he was named Harper Bryce.
Harper Bryce? No, unfortunately not.
That'd be great.
Speaking of which, Bryce Harper just hit a home run. Anyway.
Good job for him.
Yes. So, okay, so you were saying that a way we could capitalize on this was to... Oh, yeah, send a bunch of podcast emails or call into radio stations. I think that's kind of cool. You could be known as the Joseph Martin trade guy if you're incessant enough, and then when it happens, you'll be totally vindicated.
Yeah, you got to make sure to be like so bold with your prediction that everyone kind of turns against you, you know? But then it'll actually happen, and everybody will pretend to have been on your side all along, of course. And
right.
That's got to feel good when that happens. I just had a really good idea. What was it? The other thing you could do, here it was, that probably one of the better ideas that we've had so far, ever, really, is start buying up all of the New York real estate that you can. You know, it shouldn't be too difficult, I would imagine. And once the trade happens, you can then, you know, reach out to Joseph Martin, and now that you know he's a professional athlete, you can charge him very high rent because he can certainly afford it. And the benefit is, you know, since you have all that real estate, the idea, of course, is that he can't say no to you because there really aren't other options. But the kind of side benefit is you would own a lot of really valuable real estate that you could rent to other people as well. And that is,
you know what I'm thinking about is, you know, if you could do that, you know, you could do that even like absent this trade. You could just buy a bunch of New York real estate, like even and rent it to people normally, like
just having nothing to do with this
this
situation at all. It's just,
yes.
I guess what we're saying is you should invest in real estate
in New York City specifically.
In New York City specifically, because we obviously know that money is worth the most money of any investment, but real estate, I would say, is probably the second most money that you can get in an investment. So cool. So, definitely some good multifaceted advice there. Any closing thoughts on this question?
I think we've covered really every possibility. I think we can move on to the next question.
All right, let's hear it. Who does this question come to us from?
This question comes to us from Bob Blanket.
Bob Blanket says, I have a cousin who believes in conspiracy theories, and it's making family gatherings really uncomfortable because she's very vocal about her beliefs. The rest of the family is clearly trying to talk her out of it, but she keeps on insisting that the Earth is round, and 5G towers don't cause COVID, and the moon landing is real. I don't want my cousin to be mind-controlled by deep state fake news, but none of the 100% very real sources backed up by true facts have managed to convince her. Anyway, me and the rest of my family are about to invest in a very promising multi-level marketing business opportunity. So when we all inevitably become rich, would it be unethical to use our money to re-educate my cousin for her own safety and benefit?
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of flags of various colors in this question, I would say.
I don't even know where to begin with this question.
Yeah. I just want to say for everybody out there, and this is 100% not a joke. If you have the opportunity to invest in a very promising multi-level marketing business opportunity, let me just be real with you for a second. That is definitely a scam. You should probably buy all of the New York real estate instead.
I don't know why more people aren't buying New York real estate.
Yeah. I guess really it's the problem is only one person can buy all of the New York real estate, right?
That's a good point.
There's got to be a lot of competition.
It's going to be us, I guess, at this point, since we've thought of it.
Since we had the idea.
We should probably edit out all of the parts where we advise other people to do it.
It's a shame that you quit your job, because I don't know if I'm going to have enough capital on my own to buy all of the New York real estate that's available right now.
Well, I'm sure we'll find a way. We can get a loan or something.
We can probably convince some bank that our podcast is worth billions of dollars and, use it as collateral for our.
We have a rich friend. I'm sure he'll be able to help us out.
Oh yeah, easily. We do have some insider information on Joseph Martin that we can use to our financial benefit.
Man, this is all coming together. Okay,
right.
But back to the conspiracy theories question.
Yeah.
So my first thought is, I'm not sure how the Earth being round is a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Like, this person's theory is actually that there is no conspiracy to convince us that the Earth is round. It's just actually round. So, like, it would not be a conspiracy. There'd be an anti-conspiracy theory or a no conspiracy theory.
That's an I didn't really think of it. I was imagining that Bob Blanket believed, for example, that the Earth was flat.
No. Bob Blanket believes the Earth is flat.
Okay.
Right? And most people think that the Earth is round. So Bob Blanket's conclusion is that there's a conspiracy to convince us that the Earth is round, even though it's actually flat.
Okay.
With me so far.
Yeah, no, I think we're 100% agreeing.
So the fact that Bob Blanket's cousin thinks that the Earth is round means that Bob Blanket's cousin thinks that there is no conspiracy to convince us that the Earth is round.
Okay.
She thinks that the Earth is actually round and it's just people telling us the truth, right? The theory that the Earth is round is actually a non-conspiracy theory. It's a theory that there's no conspiracy.
Are you saying that, like, everybody who doesn't believe in conspiracies is just believing in a conspiracy that there is no conspiracy?
No, I'm saying that they're believing in a lack of conspiracy. They believe in no non-conspiracy. They believe in, like, if I have a theory that the Earth is round, it's a non-conspiracy theory because I believe that there's no conspiracy.
So you're just saying that, like, believing in facts is not believing in conspiracies.
Even if it's the thing is, yes, but even if it's not, even if we're not taking into account whether it's true or not, like, let's imagine a scenario where the Earth is actually flat, and there is a conspiracy to convince us that it's round. People who believed that conspiracy would be believing that it's not a conspiracy. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so, like, they're on kind of the default side of the belief where it's not actually a conspiracy.
Right, so it's not a conspiracy theory to believe that. It's just a non-conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I mean, because there's nobody out there going like, it's all a conspiracy that everybody's telling us the truth that the Earth is round.
Right. It's not a conspiracy. In that case, they wouldn't think it's a conspiracy. They would just think that's how the world is. The world is round, and everyone knows that it's round.
Yeah. Whereas, like, if you're on the flat Earth side, for example, you're like, it's a conspiracy. Everybody thinks the Earth is round.
Everyone thinks the Earth is round, even though it's actually flat.
Even though it's actually flat, versus everybody thinks the Earth is round
because it is,
which is correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So we're on the same page now with the terminology.
I'm glad we very deliberately described what exactly we meant by that. That really added to the discussion. The value here.
Okay. So, all right, with that in mind, that these are not conspiracy theories, they are non-conspiracy theories.
Right.
Let's go to the actual question, I think, at this point. Is it unethical for us to use our money to re-educate our cousin about the truth?
Yeah.
Let's ignore all the other stuff in the question for the moment.
Okay.
Like, the fact that this person is clearly not going to have a lot of money. Let's just say they did.
Right.
How would it be ethical for them to correct their cousin's beliefs?
So when you say correct their beliefs, are you saying it from the perspective of Bob Blanket's, where
from Bob Blanket's perspective, this person has incorrect beliefs?
So is it ethical to spend money to convince someone that the Earth is flat, for example?
Right. And I would say it's definitely ethical. Well, okay, it depends on. In general, it's ethical, but it depends on what you spend your money on. Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with spending your money trying to convince people that the Earth is flat.
Right.
But you can't, for example, spend money to kidnap that person, like, in any way. That would definitely not be ethical.
Right. So I guess what we're saying is it's okay to spread misinformation as long as you do it right? You know, like...
It's okay...
Like,
it's
don't
okay
don't
to
like
spread.
forcibly indoctrinate people, but if you're just like buying Facebook ads, we're cool with that. Is that the?
It's right. And to be clear, I do think it's unethical to spread misinformation on purpose. Like, if you believe that the Earth is round, but you think it would benefit you to get other people to think the Earth is flat, so you buy a bunch of Facebook ads. I think that would be unethical.
So we're saying like it's potentially it's okay if you genuinely believe something to try and spend money for that's a reasonable.
It's not
point.
really reasonable, in my opinion. It's not reasonable to say, oh, you know, if you believe something to be true, you can't try and convince other people that it's also true. Like, that's a very basic thing that I think is a reasonable thing for people to do.
I mean, that's kind of an interesting point. That's all I have to say. That's an interesting point.
Okay. Very, very constructive commentary there. Okay. Do we want to tackle any other parts of this question?
I mean, unless we... Actually, there is one more... I'm curious. This is not something that I think we can answer, but I think it's maybe something we can speculate on for a little bit here. Bob Blankets brings up both the deep state fake news and also 100% very real sources backed up by true facts. And I don't maybe this is just a little bit of introspection that Bob Blankets needs to do on his own, really, but when I, believe something is a 100% very real source backed up by true facts, I don't feel like I would describe it that way. Right. Maybe Bob Blankets is really trying to convince himself.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get that sense?
Yeah, I kind of get that sense. I actually think Bob Blanket's more trying to convince us, that these sources are legitimate sources.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I mean, I assume Bob Blanket believes in this. I'm just assuming that. I mean, you might be right that he's not sure and he's trying to convince himself, but it seems to me more like he's concerned that we won't believe in his sources, and so he's trying to what's the word I'm looking for? Not exaggerate, but emphasize is the word. Emphasize that these are legitimate sources for sure, 100%. So,
okay. Yeah. Well,
maybe a little bit of insecurity in that department.
In that case, well, I don't know. Maybe here's an experiment for Bob Blankets. Then, I think what you should do, because we've kind of determined that it's ethical to spend your money, but maybe we have yet to determine whether that would be particularly effective, and maybe we have some concerns based on what you just stated. As to the effectiveness of whatever means that Bob would choose to use here. So maybe you should try and convince us of your views via email, and we'll see how that goes.
Right, and I would say, in my experience with people who believe the Earth is round, such as myself,
right,
it's very difficult to convince them that it's not. You would need some pretty incontrovertible evidence, physical evidence I'm talking about, not just some article somewhere that kind of points out suspicious things that the government has done or about the world.
Yeah.
Because I'm 100% with you that the government does suspicious things. So
yeah, no arguments here for sure. So,
all right, so yeah, get some good proof and come back and talk to us, and we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to our last question here. Who does this come to us from?
This comes to us from Will Confetti.
Will Confetti asks, "My friend and I were going on vacation to New York. We started driving, but by the time we reached Pittsburgh, the traffic was horrible. It was 3 more days before we reached the New York State border. By then, cars were trying to drive over each other to get there. The next day, when we reached the bridge over to Manhattan, we saw that the city had just turned into a pile of cars. So, where should we go on vacation instead? We were really excited about New York, so we want it to be as similar as possible.
Wow. Having just visited New York, I can confirm that the city is actually just a pile of cars now.
Right.
I want to I think we should, spend most of our time actually answering this question, but I do want to briefly say that, the pile of cars is really not that bad if you want to give it a second chance. I understand that the trip there was probably not ideal, but, quick.
The pile of cars where the Empire State Building used to be has a very nice observation deck.
Right. For sure. And
and you can hear a lot about that if you listen to our last week's episode.
The pile of cars that's filling in the Hudson and East Rivers has a pile of cars in the shape of a boat that tours it that's very very interesting as well.
Turns out pile of cars is just atoms. The pile of atoms.
All right. So let's assume that that Will Confetti here has kind of considered that as an option with his friend and kind of turned it down, right? So what other places are there that are similar to New York that
sure.
Will and his friend might want to go on vacation?
Right.
The thing that comes to mind for me right away is actually very, very close to New York. But it is in fact Boston, which is fairly nearby, also a city. Maybe at risk of also being a pile of cars due to proximity. You may be taking that risk. But
it's funny you should mention that because I actually was thinking about Jersey City, New Jersey, which is across the river from New York City.
Yeah.
Number one, it has city in the name.
Ooh.
Kind of like New York City, although New York City doesn't officially have city in the name.
Right. It's also named after the state as well.
It's also named after the state, just like New York is.
Yeah, very similar so far.
The clincher, in my opinion, is that it has the world's largest freestanding single-face clock. Which is kind of like Times Square in a way.
That's a good point.
So
yeah.
So I would say that if you sorry.
Is that the clock that says Colgate on it?
Yes, it is.
Wow. What a legendary attraction. I mean, if you were really excited about New York, well, don't worry about it. Right across the river, there's a gigantic clock that says Colgate.
Even if New York weren't under a pile of cars,
yeah.
That still gives New York a run for its money, in my opinion.
A strong contender. And you know what?
I
guess I would imagine it would be unfathomable if this were not the case. Let's just assume that this clock has a gift shop, right? That's a reasonable assumption.
Obviously.
You know what I bet they exclusively sell?
Pint glasses, for sure.
Pint glasses, for sure. Oh, man.
All right, so...
I don't think we talked about that in the other episodes. That's not going to make any sense.
We did not, so no one's going to know what that means. But, okay, so you brought up the fact that Boston is close enough that it might also be a pile of cars, which means Jersey City would also certainly be a pile of cars in this scenario. So I guess my suggestion may not be particularly useful.
Yeah, optimistically, it's a good option, but maybe we need to look further south or potentially even west.
Sure. So of course, when we're talking about big cities, the next thing that comes to my mind is West Lafayette, Indiana.
Man, I was literally just thinking the same thing. That is uncanny.
It's uncanny, and I would say in terms of buildings, West Lafayette's a little bit lacking compared to New York City, but it's got the same big city feel.
For sure.
The same charm that New York City has, the same iconic, locations to visit. I mean,
Yep.
you've got the statue of the guy with the hammer, number one. That's basically the same as good as the Empire State Building.
Yep.
You've got
There's also that arch that they
there's
just
an
built.
arch. Statue of Liberty has no chance against that arch.
Yeah, that's a pretty good arch.
Number 3, there's that lawn Memorial Mall.
Oh, yeah.
That's like basically Central Park.
I mean, they're exactly
if you think
the same,
about it.
yeah.
Yeah, so I would say that if you and it's definitely far away enough to avoid being a pile of cars, since you mentioned Will that Pittsburgh is not a pile of cars.
That's true.
So I would say West Lafayette is my number 3 choice after Jersey City.
All right. Let's see. Are there really any other? I can't genuinely think of anything that would be like a worthy follow-up to West Lafayette. I mean, maybe if you're in the neighborhood and maybe if you feel like, sure, West Lafayette was good, but in New York you can go to Manhattan, you can go to the other ones. There's also
the other boroughs. Also, by the way, I forgot to mention West Lafayette has a river, just like New York.
Ooh, that's a good one.
The Wabash is basically the Hudson River.
Right.
So
that's it's got that going for it. But if you're in the neighborhood
anyway, go on.
And you feel like you wanted to visit an additional place, what's right up the highway from West Lafayette is South Bend.
I really thought you were gonna say like what's the terrible Indiana town that's up there?
Oh, Gary?
Gary, Indiana.
Gary, Indiana. No, I don't think we can in good conscience advise anyone to.
I don't think anyone can ever recommend going to Gary, Indiana.
But yeah, have no worries. South Bend is I wouldn't say it's got quite the big city feel, but there is a Burger King there that I've been to a few times. That's pretty solid. There's also I can't remember if I've ever told you this story, but my brother, when I was visiting home several months ago, this may have actually been over like Christmas or something like that. He was really hyping up this like music store that he had been to with some of his friends, where he could like go and buy CDs and stuff, and it sounded like this kind of like little family. I'm
curious how you hype up a music store, but go on.
he was just like, oh, they've got all these like cool CDs, and it's like a used thing, or it's like you just there's all kinds of stuff that you can go and I guess just kind of if you can picture kind of like the little family owned like kind of underground music store vibe. Like he made it sound kind of interesting,
yeah. Does your brother have a CD player?
He does. He has a CD player in his car.
Okay, go on.
Because he has an old car. I actually think I have a CD player in my car, and I have a new car, so that's
nice.
That's anyway. He talked up this store where he bought CDs with his friends, and I was like, all right, well, we got to make the trip right to South Bend to go to this store.
Absolutely.
And so of course we get down there. We've got our Chick-fil-A, another classic South Bend staple. Pretty exclusive to South Bend.
I was gonna say I don't think I've ever been to a Chick-fil-A outside of South Bend, and I've never been to South Bend. So I've never been to a Chick-fil-A, I guess.
Yeah, that logically follows. Anyway, we get to this famous music store or whatever, and we pull up, and it's a Half Price Books. That was the store. Yeah. So
although a half price bookstore is not bad.
I mean, it wasn't bad. I was just expecting something not like a big chain of well-known stores. Like there's one in town here. Like I wasn't going to this exclusive thing. It was
right.
It was a bit of a letdown, but we did have an interesting time in there. Looked around quite a bit, ended up not buying anything, but
Rip.
what can you do?
I do want to say I think this discussion of big cities would be incomplete if I didn't mention Madison, Wisconsin, with cornfields in its city limits. You really get that. No, I can't even pretend that Madison is a big city like that.
Yeah. I mean, genuinely, I'm probably like literally the only person here. I never really see anyone else. So
you and Shelby.
Yeah, population 2.
Okay, well, that's the end of our advice. I guess we're a little under an hour here. Did you want to kind of try and fill the remaining time, or just call it?
Yeah, well, I actually we can do one more question. I know it's not written down here, but it might be useful in kind of a metaphorical way, if you know what I mean. So
yeah, I know exactly what you mean, but in a larger sense, I have no idea what you mean. So why don't you ask the question?
Let's go ahead and ask the question. Since this is kind of just made up on the spot, by which I mean it was written in by a listener, but I didn't write it down on the sheet, of course. The question is, my favorite podcast is about to go on hiatus for an unspecified amount of time. How can I possibly entertain myself in the meantime, waiting for them to come back and grace my life with their glorious content?
Nice.
So I don't know if this
question.
reminds you of any situations that may or may not be.
I cannot think of a single one. My first thought would be our situation, but I know we specified how long our hiatus is, so really it's not at all the same.
It's completely different and entirely unlike this situation.
Right.
Take this as a huge metaphor, but let's go ahead and answer this question.
Sure. I would say, theoretically, if this podcast has produced hundreds of hours of audio and content,
right?
It can be useful to go back and listen through. I know you and I have. Okay, this is totally outside the realm of metaphor. I know you and I have listened to our podcast through a couple times for various episodes, but I don't know if our listener has. So if you get the chance, go back, pick up episode 1. Attempt number 1, and go from there. Because I doubt that you remember most of what we've said, considering how boring most of it is.
That's an interesting point. Here's an idea.
Most of it.
You can go through the episodes, and as you find interesting sound bites, save them off and email them to us in the form of a physical soundboard that I can plug into my computer and record along with my microphone audio.
Right.
So be sure to email that to us. I think we've come dangerously close to not mentioning what our email is in this episode.
We really did. That's kind of an embarrassment.
Yikes! And we even had that bit in the middle there with emailing podcasts, but. Anyway, let me just go ahead and reassure our listeners that our email, as always, has not changed and can be found on our website, alexandalex@joelthepodcast.github.io/alexandalex@joelthepodcast.website/index.html. So once you've gone through the painstaking process of listening to all hundreds plus hours of our content and creating a soundboard for us, be sure to email that to us. That's all metaphorically, of course. So, okay, that's an idea.
Email us. What?
That's an idea. So,
yeah. In addition to, obviously, that was a metaphor, but listeners should actually email us. And that was our real email address. So, really email us at that real email address, and we'll get to your email in 4 months.
What would be hilarious, actually, is if we got regular emails throughout the hiatus and then had to have multiple episodes when we came back of literally just reading emails and responding to them, and the emails I assume would get increasingly more just absurd and So there's your chance to really shape the course of our return to podcasting, as you say, in a few months. Although we'll be on hiatus for a little bit longer, we'll probably have the chance to record a couple episodes here and there. So,
Indeed.
Yeah. Back to the metaphors. I think another thing you could do, and this might be kind of interesting actually, is record a podcast yourself, and then immediately listen back to it. I personally find that really interesting, which is why we've been doing that this whole time.
Sure. Yeah, and you can kind of get a feel for what it's like to podcast, because I think as a listener, you don't really get a sense for what we go through as, not saying it's hard, I mean, it is a little bit hard. I'm not saying it's like a challenge. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying like complaining about podcasting. I'm just saying like you can get it's like interesting to get a sense of what podcasting is like, a peek behind the curtain, as they say.
Right. And I think there's, nothing more honest that you can do aside from realizing exactly how funny you are when listening to an hour-long recording of yourself. That's a real wake-up call to kind of, you'll realize pretty quickly whether you're cut out for it in the long run. Or alternatively, you'll remain completely oblivious and just record 102 episodes just, out of nowhere for no reason. So that's always an option.
Yep. I don't know. I'm really liking the option to email us like a bunch of times.
You could spend all of your time just emailing us. I think that's the real answer.
I don't have any other advice aside from maybe, go have a life.
Yeah.
We don't actually produce that much content. We only record 1 hour a week at most.
Surely the other hours of your week are spent doing something, so just do that thing for one additional hour per week.
Yes. Okay. That concludes, excuse me again, this episode. Sincerely, thank you for listening, everybody.
Yep.
I know it feels like I'm saying goodbye forever. It's not really goodbye forever, but it's goodbye for a long time. So I'm kind of making a little bit of a... Imagine, like, in the future, people are going to be, like, listening to this episode and then just go right on to the next episode.
Literally, like,
climactic.
30 seconds after the end, just load up the next episode. Yeah.
But, for those of you who will not, thank you for all your listening and support and emails. Really, this is just a cephalopod master. Thank you for your listening and support and emails. We really appreciate you.
Yep.
And we will be excited to get back for one episode in December and then once again next May. You have any closing remarks?
This moment is just truly monumental.
For sure.
I had to say it. I know we were all thinking it.
I don't think a single podcast has ever went on a 9-month hiatus like this.
Probably not. We're certainly the first to stop podcasting for a while, so I'm looking forward to when we can be the first to start podcasting again after a break.
Right.
That'll also be truly monumental.
Another monumental event.
Yeah. So, all right. Closing thoughts. None. Let's wrap this up.
All right. With that, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm Alex.
I'm Alex.
And this has been
Joel.
For our listeners, Alex just nutted on my phone.